Our stay at Rancho Naturalista was going well, but the rain was still falling. We had decided to stay at the lodge today and so took up residence on the public balcony to watch the gardens. It might be raining, but the birds were very active. A rather damp Lessons motmot perched in a tree at the rear of the garden. At the time of our stay, this was known as blue-crowned motmot, but it has since been renamed. Female green-breasted mangoes are easily identified by the unique dark stripe bisecting the white underparts. This one glowed, even in the murk of a wet morning. That cecropia tree that overhung the valley was again a beguiling perch. This time a couple of grey-breasted chachalaka took advantage of the position. There was a bit of a break in the weather, enough for us to view a blue-grey tanager and a rufous-tailed hummingbird. Montezuma oripendula were also active this morning, as was one of the lodge's handymen, judging by the sound of that saw. New for the trip list was a golden-headed tanager, skulking around in the foliage. A walk in the grounds, as the rain was temporarily stopped, provided views of a couple of band-backed wrens, busy in the top of a tree near the entrance track. And the rain did not put off the ever-busy orange-billed sparrows foraging around the base of the feeders.
We saw in Costa Rica.
A break in the clouds around lunchtime brought out a couple of butterflies to take advantage of the porterweed. We'd seen two-barred flasher yesterday in the garden, but this view really showed just why they have that name. We had our own hummingbird feeder on our private balcony, and this one proved attractive to a long-billed hermit. The long central tail feathers distinguish this species from the similarly plumaged stripe-throated hermit. The rain settled in again for the afternoon, but it provided an opportunity to really get looks at those lovely hummingbirds. After feeding at the nectar feeders, they often came and sat in the tree right next to our private balcony. It could never be boring when we had crowned wood nymphs, white-necked Jacobins, brown violeteers, and violet saberwings to look at. Female white-necked Jacobins have a charming speckled breast and flanks. It might have been raining, but the hummers still shone. Both sexes of brown violeteer are plumaged alike. The subtle brown tones are livened up by the violeteer patch and greeny blue throat patch. This species is considered uncommon, but we saw them every day at Rancho Naturalista. Male violet saberwings were on the larger end of the hummingbird species that we saw at Rancho, but this didn't stop them being bullied at feeders by the much smaller rufous-tailed hummingbirds. They always seemed to be deeper in the foliage than the other species and much harder to get a good photo. We found chestnut-capped warbler for the first time. A bright little bird, but always skulking in the undergrowth. The next morning we decided to brave the weather and head to Tapanti National Park with Callie, the bird guide from the lodge. This park, covering 583 square kilometers, is situated at the end of the Talamanca Range in the Central Conservation Area of Costa Rica. It boasts an impressive 45 species of animal and 400 species of birds. It also boasts up to 26 feet of rainfall in a year, and it lived up to that on our visit. We did our best, juggling binoculars and umbrellas, but the cameras stayed covered, except for a few shots. A Central American dwarf squirrel, previously Alforo's pygmy squirrel, was a nice find and worth a photo, as was a white-nosed coati on the side of the entrance track. Despite the rain, we had a very impressive bird list when we finally retreated from Tapanti. Just no photos to show for it. We headed back to the lodge via sight for cabanis, then prevosts, ground sparrow, and didn't see one. You definitely can't win them all. The next day we planned to have another go for those green ibis at Katy, along with a few of the other guests staying at the lodge. We headed first for the river Tuiz, close to the lodge, which was pretty lively due to the recent rainfall. The reason for the visit was the pair of sunbittens currently being seen on the river's edge, and sure enough, we found them in a riverside field, wandering around. Good views, if not very close.
Both are the same bird, I'm probably getting the male female. You know,
On to Katy, where we finally scored with green ibis, in the same trees as we'd previously seen the crimson-fronted parakeets. It proved Callie right in his assertion that he saw these birds on 9 out of 10 visits to the reserve. Despite the rain, we moved on to the grounds of a new, not yet open, hotel called the Casa Turia. Rancho Naturalista had permission to bird the grounds, which boasted a large lake full of invasive water hyacinth, native to the Amazon basin but undeniably very pretty. A surprise here was gull-billed tern on the lake, and a bigger surprise was a couple more green ibis, this time on the ground and close enough for us to enjoy the sighting. Following our damp morning out, we returned to the lodge for lunch and spent the remainder of the day in the grounds, enjoying the many avian delights of Rancho. Today it was the collared Irasu's turn for the Cecropia tree perch. As the afternoon wore on, and the rain abated, we explored the steep entrance track. Tomorrow was to be our last full day in Costa Rica, at least for this trip, so we arranged a special trip with Callie. We were going to the Irazu volcano. It meant getting up before dawn, but the staff were there to make us breakfast before we set off. The trip was long but scenic, once the sun had risen and, surprise, the foothills were sunny and warm. We stopped to hunt for buffy-crowned wood partridge, successfully, on the way up. All too soon, the clouds descended as we headed up the volcano. It was here where we found resplendent quetzal, of course, giving some views if not in the best light. We have found quetzals on each of our visits to Costa Rica, but I don't think we've ever seen one without rain, mist, or low cloud getting in the way. Band-tailed pigeon was also present and new for the trip. Before we reached the top, we stopped at a small restaurant. Not only was it a good spot for a cup of coffee and, perhaps, a biscuit, it was also a famous spot for hummingbird feeders, and the best place to pick up some of the specialist hummers of the high elevations. We settled down with our coffees to watch and were rewarded straight away with Talamanca hummingbirds. At the time these were known as magnificent hummingbird but have since been renamed. They are common residents of the highlands of the Central and Talamanca Cordilleras. Next up was the fiery-throated hummingbird, so named for the spectacular coloration of the throat but which was very difficult to see in the damp and misty conditions. Another common resident of the highland of the Talamanca and Central Cordilleras, this species is endemic to Costa Rica and western Panama. It seemed to be a feisty little bird, ready to fight its corner against the larger Talamanca hummingbirds. The star of the show here was the tiny volcano hummingbird, one of our target species. The females were charming, of course. But it is the males that are really spectacular. There are 3 races of volcano hummingbird, living on separate volcanoes and not interbreeding. The males in the Talamanca range have grey-purple throats and those of the Poas and Bava volcanoes have red throats. However, these birds, on Irazu and Turrialba, have pinker-purple throats, especially when seen in good light. We were lucky enough to get some flashes of the true colour during our stop. Unsurprisingly, considering the limited range of the volcano hummingbird, it is an endemic of Costa Rica and western Panama. It wasn't all hummers. We were pleased to find our first rufous-collared sparrow of the trip in the bushes just outside the restaurant. We headed further up the volcano. Just before the entrance gate, we pulled off and took a short walk down a track, where we found slaty flower piercer, the second of our target birds. This endemic species is only found above the timberline. It feeds on flower nectar by using the hook on its bill to pierce the base of the flower near the nectary and then drinking the nectar using its brush-like tongue. At the top of the road was a very spacious car park. We had come here for Volcano Junco, the third in our endemic trilogy. One was very obliging, hopping around the edge of the car park in this rather desolate place. Irazu, at 3,432 meters, or 11,260 feet, is Costa Rica's highest active volcano. It has 5 craters, this was one, wreathed in mist and steam. It has erupted at least 23 times since 1723, most famously in 1963 when the eruption continued for 2 years. On the way back, we stopped off again to take a look for Cabani's ground sparrow amongst the chayote vines, but were unsuccessful. Oh well, one day maybe. Another stop was at a farm owned by some friends of the owners of Rancho. The Finca Cristina is a coffee plantation and sold excellent coffee that we were happy to take home. It also offered scintillant hummingbird, another endemic, feeding on flowers in the farm garden. First though, a silver-throated tanager was new for us and needed a good looking at. The female scintillant hummingbird was very active around the porterweed. This is the lower elevation replacement for the volcano hummingbird that we'd seen earlier. So far, so good, but we hadn't finished yet. A surprise was a spot-breasted oriole which was new for us and for Callie, and also for the owners of the finca. It's always good when the bird guide gets a lifer too. Our last morning at the lodge, and pretty much the first one where it hadn't been raining. We were flying back to Montreal in the afternoon, so would be leaving Rancho around 9:30 a.m. There was time for a little pre- and post-breakfast birding then. Grey-headed chachalacas and Montezuma auropendulus were active in the big trees. One of the auropendulus was good enough to demonstrate his unique style of display for us. He looked so proud. Another golden-headed tanager appeared, more or less exactly where we'd seen the last one a few days ago. Even on our last morning, we were still capturing new photos of species. Scarlet-rumped caciques had been fairly regular at the feeders, but we hadn't managed a photo. A last Baltimore oriole posed nicely. Another of those species that had waited until the last minute to get on the photo list was this common toady flycatcher. More chestnut-capped warblers being typically skulking. At the time of our visit, these were known as rufous-capped warblers, but they have since been renamed. They were certainly entertaining to follow through the undergrowth. Last looks at green-breasted mango and scarlet-rumped tanager, then known as Passerini's tanager. A short wander towards the entrance track brought us in range of a couple of white-collared manakins. They were not lekking yet, but it wouldn't be long before they started with their clicking, wing-snapping displays. Another of those new-to-photograph birds was this mountain Alenia. It was great to still be photographing new species, even at this stage in the trip. Down on the entrance track we enjoyed good views of broad-winged hawk and a bouncy little variable seed-eater on the track itself. All good things come to an end, and it was time for our 2.5-hour transfer back to San Jose and the international airport. This certainly was a relaxed way to do the trip. No worries about getting the hire car back on time or missing our flight. We do tend to prefer doing these things under our own steam, but it was a very good stay with some excellent birding. There is no doubt that Rancho Naturalista is a premier birding destination, and it really delivered, despite the rain. Want more information? See our travelogue, available from Amazon. Our most recent trip. A birding safari in Kenya. Enjoy our videos or pick up our travelogues. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. There are many more videos documenting our travels looking for birds all over the world on there. Oh, and a few from a little closer to home too. Thanks for watching.